Hello everyone. Okay, so in today's video series, we are going to be looking at solving simple trig equations. I say simple because it's in ordinary level leaving cert, you only ever need to find two possible solutions, but in leaving cert, you will be asked to find a general solution case. But in this video, we're just focusing on simple trig equations. So what is a trig equation? We've already kind of come across trig equations before. So for example, sine theta is equal to a half. So what are we solving for? Well, we're solving for our angle in here, theta. So if we know, just use the inverse, yeah? So sine inverse, so theta is equal to sine inverse a half. Theta is going to equal 30. Okay, cool. That is. No. So, as we learned in our unit circle in the last video, we can evaluate trig identities for angles greater than 90 degrees. So I have here sine is equal to a half, right? So when sine 30 is equal to a half. But also sine 150 equals a half. You could put that in your calculator to check it out. But sine 150 also equals to a half. So today's video is asking the question, well, how do we get that second angle, right? Because you just saw you put sine inverse in your calculator and that's it. Like, you're not getting anything, you're not getting the other angle, you are only getting the one. So in this video, we are going to look at solving for the second angle here. So how do we do that? So for angles greater than 90 degrees, so we have to use our unit circle or our cast method, yeah? So if you recall, this is key information you need to know. So remember, sex and the city, sex and the city, sex and the city. So in my first quadrant between 0 and 90 degrees, my ratios are positive. So that's the realm we've been working in junior cycle. But now when we get into senior cycle, we are working in the realm of these other three quadrants. So sex and the city. So sine is positive in the second quadrant. Tan is positive in the third quadrant, and cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant, right? So how is this relevant? So I'll show you now. So this is how we solve trigonometric equations, okay? It's very straightforward. So first step, from the sign on the right-hand side of our equation, when we have sine, cosine, tan of something is equal to a number, we look at the sign in front of it, if it's positive or negative. So we see that sign, and then using that information, we determine if it's in the first quadrant, second quadrant, or third quadrant, or fourth quadrant. Second step, we're going to ignore the sign of our equation. So say, for example, if I had sine theta is equal to minus a half, we're going to ignore that minus, right? And we're just going to say sine theta is equal to a half, and we're going to calculate that angle. So that angle is going to be known as our reference angle. And then finally, when we have our reference angle, we use our information from part one, right? So what quadrants our ratio lies in, and then we fill it into our little formula here. So if we have our reference angle theta, if our trig ratio lies in the first quadrant, well, we have theta is equal to theta. The angle is equal to the angle. If it lies in the second quadrant, we have to do 180 minus the reference angle. If in the third quadrant, it's the reference angle plus 180. And if it's in the fourth quadrant, it's 360 minus the reference angle. And then we verify our answer in the end, because again, we can check our answers with these equations. And again, it's very easy for me to say all these instructions, but let's just do an example here. So here's an example here. So cosine A is equal to minus a half. So I don't know if you can see, that's a minus right there. So minus a half. Find two values of A that are less than 360 that satisfy this equation. Right? Sorry about this. Bing, 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 bing. Boom. Right. So cosine A is equal to minus a half. Find two values of A less than 3/6 that satisfy this equation. Round to the nearest degree. Well, step one, find where our ratio lies. So remember, it's cosine A is equal to minus a half. So my cosine ratio is going to be negative. And if you remember Sex and the City, right? Well, cosine is negative in the second and third quadrants, right? So in the second and third quadrants, it is negative. Step two, ignore the sign and calculate the reference angle. So I'm going to ignore the minus in front of the in the half now. So I have cosine A is equal to, so usually minus a half. I'm ignoring that sign for the moment for this question. I'm just going to say a half. A is going to be equal to cosine inverse of a half. Put that into my calculator. I'm going to get bing, 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 bong, ding, ding, half. I think it's going to be 60 degrees. So my reference angle is going to be 60 degrees. Right? So first step, find which quadrants my ratio lies in. Second step, find my reference angle ignoring the sign. And then my third step here, using my reference angle, identify the angle in each of the relevant quadrants. So if you recall from part one, I found out it is in, go away please, it is in quadrant 2 and it's in quadrant 3. So I have my reference angle is equal to 60 degrees. So let's calculate now the answer here. So in quadrant 2, it is negative. So I have 180 minus 60, which is 120 degrees, which is my first solution. And then my second solution here is going to be 180 plus 60, which is going to be 240, which is my second solution. So we're going to put this into our calculator now and try this out. So let me just get the calculator up on screen. There we go. Let me move it over here. So we can test now our answers here. So I am going to find out if cosine of 120, I'm going to find cosine of 240. So put in a calculator. So cosine 120 is equal to minus a half. Boom. Then I'm going to go and change 240. So cosine of 240. Whoop. Boom! A half. Gorge. So I have now just found the two angles in which the cosine of them angles is equal to half. And that's how you solve the equations. Just them 3 simple steps. Right? Because now what might happen is, right, if you didn't do all these steps and you just said, well, have cosine A is equal to a half, and it doesn't say, and it says find more than one solution, but you forgot how to do it. If you put in, well, cosine inverse minus a half, minus 1 over 2, my bracket, I'm only getting the 120. I'm not getting the 240. So I'm only getting half of my possible solutions. Right, so let's have a look at some more examples here. So sine A is equal to minus 0.45678. Find two values of A less than 60 degrees that satisfy this equation. I think that's meant to say 360, oopsie daisy. So two values of A less than or equal to 360 degrees that satisfy this equation round to the nearest degree. So step one, find which quadrant it lies in. So Sex and the City, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my sine is negative. So sine of the angle is negative. So since it's negative, it's going to be in quadrant 3 and 4 because sine is positive in quadrant 1 and 2. So I found what quadrants it lies in. Step 2, reference angle. So ignore the sign. So I'm going to have sine A is equal to, or I might say sine theta to change it up. Sine theta is equal to 0.45678. Theta is going to be equal to sine inverse 0.45678. So I drop the minus and I calculate my reference angle. I calculate my reference angle here. I'm going to get 0.45678. I'm going to get theta is equal to 27.17 degrees. That's my reference angle. Gorge. So now I have my reference angle. And step 3, I'm going to use my knowledge here of my quadrant. So if it's in quadrant 1, the reference angle stays. If it's in quadrant 2, it's 180 minus my reference. If it's in quadrant 3, it's 180 plus my reference. If it's in quadrant 4, it's 360 minus my reference. So we know from part 1, it is in quadrant 3 and 4. So my first solution is 180 plus 27.17, which is going to be 207.179. So I'm just going to round down to 207. And my second solution is going to be 360 minus 27.17. Which is 332.83, which is going to round up to 333 degrees. And now we can test this by putting it in our calculator. So I'm going to get my calculator back up here. Now, since I did round, my answers might be slightly off, but as long as they're in the round minus 0.45678, we should be fine. So I'm going to test these out now. So 207 and 333. Oopsie daisy. So ding, ding, ding. So sine 207. Close my bracket. I'm going to get minus 0.45399. Yep. So it's in around the same amount. Same. And then ding, ding, ding. 333. Yeah, so 0.5399. So I got the same answer in both, right? And they're both in and around my original answer of minus 0.45678. That is only because we rounded our angles as per the question states. Right. So that's how you do it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Right, let's do some more here. So now I have tan A is equal to square root of 3 all over 3. Find two values of A less than 360 that satisfy this equation round to the nearest degree. Well, so first of all, let's find what quadrant it lies in, sex and the city. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is, my tan is positive. So it's going to lie in the third quadrant and it's going to lie in my first quadrant. Second step. My reference angle. My reference angle theta. Well, I ignored the sign here. Well, there's a plus, so it's fine. I don't have to ignore any minus sign. So it's going to be tan inverse root 3 over 3. And if my suspicions are correct, it should be like 60 degrees. But we will see, ladies and gentlemen. 30. Oh, I was wrong. Okay, so my reference angle is equal to 30 degrees. Step 3, now we need to use my rule here. So if it's in quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. So if it's in quadrant 1, my reference angle stays. If it's in quadrant 2, remember 180 minus my reference angle, 180 plus my reference angle, 360 minus my reference angle. So again, as we stated, it's in quadrant 1 and it's in quadrant 3. So my first solution is going to be, well, just 30 degrees. It stays the same. And my second solution is going to be 180 plus theta. So 180 plus 30, which is going to be 210 degrees. And again, let's check on our calculators. So let me just open up the calculator here. Bing. Drag it over here. So let's try it out. So tan 30 root 3 over 3, gorge. Next one, 210. Perfect, root 3 over 3. Bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing. That's it. That's all we have to do, ladies and gentlemen. Let me put the calculator right here. Now, sometimes we can get trickier ones. Like, for example, here, I could have a coefficient now in front of my trig ratio. So, I have 2 sine A is equal to 1. Well, first, let's get rid of that 2. So, 2 sine A is equal to 1. Divide both sides by 2. So, I have sine A is equal to a half. So, now let's find what reference angle, what quadrant, what quadrant it's in. So, again, remember, sex and the city. So, sine A is a positive a half. So, that means it's in my first quadrant. It's in my first quadrant and it's in my second quadrant. Step 3, my reference angle. My reference angle here. So I'm going to have sine A is equal to a half. I don't need to ignore the sign because there's no minus sign in front of us. So A is equal to sine inverse a half. A is equal to 30 degrees. So that's my reference angle. I should really say theta here, but it doesn't really matter. See here, there's my reference angle. Then finally, we use my rule. First quadrant, it's just theta. Second quadrant, 180 minus theta, or my reference angle. 180 plus my reference angle. 360 minus my reference angle. So my first solution, well, I'm in the first quadrant, so my first solution is going to be A is equal to 30 degrees. My second solution is going to be, well, it's in the second quadrant, so it's going to be 180 minus 30, which is 150, which just so happens to be the solutions to the first example I gave at the start of the video. Funny how things work out like that, isn't it? So I have sine 30 and sine 150, and again, I can check on my calculator here. So, bing, 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 sine 30, I have gorge. 150. Gorge! It works out. So I know it's right. I can box it off and I can go about my exam knowing that I've got 100% in that question. In 150. Right, finally, one more example, then I'll leave yous be, ladies and gentlemen. So, 3 cosine A is equal to minus root 2. Find two values of A less than 360 that satisfy this equation round to the nearest degree. So, pause if you want to try it for yourself. So glad you're back. Right, put our thinking caps on, ladies and gentlemen. So I have 3 cosine A is equal to minus root 2. So I need to get rid of this pesky little 3. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I'm going to have cosine A is equal to minus root 2 over 3. So what quadrants does it lie in? So again, sex and the city. So cosine is negative. It is a negative old Nelly. So it is in my second quadrant and my third quadrant, right? Because it is positive in my first and fourth quadrant. Next step, my reference angle. My ref angle, theta. Well, cos theta is equal to, I have minus root 2 over 3. So I'm going to make that a positive root 2 over 3. Theta, my reference angle, is going to be cosine inverse root 2 over 3. Bing bang. Bong. Sing sang song. Bing bing bing. Bong. Bong. Ding. Put on my calculator. I'm going to get my reference angle theta is equal to 61.87, which I'm just going to round up to 62 degrees. Then finally, here, so you know the drill, my reference angle if it's in the first quadrant, 180 minus my reference angle if it's in the second, 180 plus my reference angle in the third, 360 minus my reference angle if it's in the fourth. So it's in the second and third quadrants. So my first solution is going to be 180 minus 62. So A is going to be 118 degrees. And my second solution is going to be 180 plus 62, which is going to bear 242 degrees. So A is equal to 242 degrees. Highlight that there. Right, again, let's check our answers on our calculators. So, bing, bing, bing. Cosine, 118. Now, we might get the exact value here. So, I have minus 0.46947. Okay, cool. Let's find what minus root 2 over 3 is. So, minus root 2 over 3. That is going to be equal to minus, let me write that here so I don't forget, minus 0.4714. So, there, so minus 0.469. Okay, close enough. Gorge. Then I'm going to put in now 242 to check my answer. 242. Bing. Minus 0.46947. Again, it is close enough to the actual value of minus root 2 over 3. Right, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you solve simple trigonometric equations, and thus concluding my trigonometry series for Leaving Cert ordinary level, at least, anyway. So, I'll catch you on the flip side, and I bid you adieu. Bye!